Hi. This is a very sad day, a very sad time. It's about 2:30 on the 2nd of July 2013. I will soon go to sleep and then I awake. I pack up the things left in this house, put them in the trailer. I give it a bit of a sweep through. I lock the doors, turn off the lights, and for the last time, I'll be in this house. I was introduced to this house in 1970 when I came from Perth, Western Australia, to study at Woolwich Bible College so many years ago. Bob and Phyllis Emblem, who owned the house at the time, were a childless couple, very devout Catholic people, who lived here. They lived here for a number of years prior. This was their family home. I was welcomed into the family, in fact, to the point where Phyllis, particularly, referred to me as the son she never had. I was to find this place to be, whenever I needed a place to stay, was a place that I could depend upon. If I needed to have a place where I wanted to, eat, whatever, I could be here. This was, in fact, whilst I lived at the time, 57, the Point Road, Woolwich, which is a part of the Bible College, this was also my home. Phyllis Emblem herself, her birth name was Phyllis Rose. She was a second cousin to my father. And my father, who grew up in Sydney, had very much of a close relationship with the family. So much so, it was for much of Phyllis's young life, she actually believed my father to be one of her brothers, because the fact that my father's father was not actually a very brilliant parent to him. But my father did find this family, that is Phyllis's father and mother and the rest of the family, to be very welcoming to him. So I guess it's very fitting that Phyllis would have welcomed me, Phyllis and Bob would have both welcomed me into their home and into their family, to become very much a part of it. It was a privilege for me to be a part of that family, a privilege to get to know this house in the various configurations that it was in. This house was built back in 1855. It's not double brick, it's triple brick. A very different form. It was originally a 2 up and 2 down house with a detached kitchen in the backyard, and obviously a detached toilet, which would originally have been a panned toilet. It was a house that had an interesting feature, which is now, had a tradesman's entrance into the backyard, which was an extension to the house, has now incorporated that tradesman's entrance into the dining area. The house, in fact, takes up the entire width of the block, the skin of the paint being the boundary. And it has a permissible overhang for the eaves and gutters on each side. When I was in New South Wales, this was always a place that I was able to be at. I have a long, hard connection with this house. Many things have occurred. It's from this house I've taken Phyllis to meet some wonderful people, some big leaders in this state. I took her to a number of concerts that she enjoyed, and she always remembered how she was able to meet John Howard, and how that John Howard had taken note of certain things about me, to establish the fact that John Howard was aware of me and some of my ideals and ideas. Originally, Phyllis was from a working class family, and therefore she fully supported the Australian Labor Party. But as I showed her the problem with supporting a party that wants to have people to become, as it were, dependent upon them, breeding a dependency nature, as I suggested to her, it was an unwise place to be. I suggested to her it was wise for a political party to move in the direction of assisting people to become self-sufficient and self-supporting, always willing to be capable of responding to the needs of those people who would never, for whatever reason, be able to help themselves, but always wanting to find a way that those people could do at least something for themselves. That true compassion was not doing things for others, but true compassion was helping others to help themselves. And we discussed many things here, the practical application of Christianity, of how that Christianity is based not upon the premises that God does everything for us and therefore we need to do nothing. But even though God can and will help us all the way, He wants us to take some initiative and to do things. How the Bible refers to the fact that God will guide and direct our paths, but we must be making paths for us to be guided and directed. So much of the Scriptures is about enabling the direction to which we go, but not about carrying us to the place, but guiding and directing. Because God made us people with initiative, people with ideas, people with the capacity to think for ourselves. Wonderful time of taking Phyllis through all of that. Phyllis loved her Catholic Church. In fact, she sold her property at Nelson's Bay, a retreat that they had at Nelson's Bay. In some ways, you might say it's a bit strange, because Phyllis was not one to go much outside of the house. She would just go to church, go down the street to buy a few things and back home, and spent most of her days indoors for much of the life that I knew her. When she went to Nelson's Bay, she spent most of the time in the house. She would go to church, she would go to the shops. There was many beaches there at Nelson's Bay and many things to do around the bay. Phyllis was not really wanting to do much of that. She enjoyed being there in Nelson's Bay the idea of Nelson's Bay to her was a good thing. That's the way she was, and there were some relatives there, and she liked to visit those relatives that she knew and the people from the history. The Rose family that established the hotel at Nelson's Bay Hotel. The Rose family did so many things in that area. You see, they were very much connected to very much of the Newcastle surrounding suburbs, and also in Sydney. There was a wide sweep of the connection of the family in the area. They were a large family. I never got to meet all of the relatives. I met many. Not many. During the 1980s, Bob was one of those people who used to, he loved his beer. What he would do, he would buy a slab of beer, bring it to the house, and 2 or 3 slabs for the shed. Phyllis believed that Bob had got control of his drinking, and I suppose in a sense he had. The way that he had controlled it was that he would have a beer inside and 3 out. And so that it appeared that he had control, and his control was the fact that he knew when he was able to drink freely in his shed. But he would only have the one in the house to respect Phyllis. Was he an alcoholic? Well, I don't know. Maybe he was and maybe he wasn't. But Bob was a good guy. He used to do a lot of the cooking. A lot of the cooking was barbecues because, unfortunately, Phyllis never really learned how to cook much. My family, I remember a story about my family coming to visit one year after I was married, and I phoned Phyllis and told her that I was leaving Newcastle and I'd be there in about 2 hours. Well, Phyllis had decided that we were going to have party pies and sausage rolls for lunch. She put them in the oven there and then, and 2.5 hours later they were very crisp, hardly edible. Phyllis, unfortunately, as I say, she wasn't a good cook. There was another Christmas, and my wife will never forget how that we had told Phyllis we were coming down for Christmas dinner, and Phyllis had bought a leg of lamb that was going to be eaten. She put it in the oven the night before to make sure it was well and truly cooked, and so it wouldn't burn. She didn't turn the oven up very high. When we arrived, after we went to church on Christmas morning, then we came to here for Christmas lunch. The meat had hardly started to cook. The temperature of the oven was not that much above the surrounding. And so my wife, Mary, she boosted the oven temperature up, and after some time of fiddling around and doing other things and delaying food and trying to take Phyllis's attention away from the fact that she had not successfully cooked the food, eventually it was cooked and we had a Christmas dinner. There was a time in the year 2000 with the Olympics, and I drove for Sydney buses. I drove out of the Burwood bus depot to assist in the Olympic effort. And I stayed here for that time. I think Phyllis didn't understand the fact that I could cook the food. I would cook the food for her. She noted that the vegetables, after I cooked them, they needed to be chewed rather than just be mushy. And my style of cooking was very different to what she had thought. but I cooked the food during that time. But if Phyllis could have cooked, she would always be there. She always tried. When I was doing some work around the place, my biggest complaint about Phyllis was that she was sweeping up the mess even while I was making it. Yes, she was one who wanted to be tidy and wanted to be clean. As long as she was indoors, she was always wearing an apron because that's what her life was. This house brings all those memories to me. I remember her years, the struggle she had after 2000. She had a number of hospital visits, and they began to be longer, more frequent. In 2002, she had her 80th birthday party. And it was a wonderful time for her. And then soon after that, she had a major stroke. Phyllis was not to return to the house. She was taken to Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. After treatment there and stabilisation there, she was taken over to the Albion Hospital, where she was recuperating there for some time. Eventually she needed to go to a nursing home, and she went to a nursing home in it's down the road here a bit, at Ashfield, where she was to eventually die. I remember the occasion we were discussing various things there with the management of the hospital, or the nursing home. She'd been there for a little time. We were going to discuss a treatment plan, a strategy of what to do and how to help her and what to do in whatever circumstances and who to contact and all the procedures. And we'd arranged that we were going to have a meeting. We arranged that on a Saturday with another cousin, Kerry, and myself. And we were going to have a meeting there, and we'd arranged that we'd meet there in the middle of the next week. I went home that night quite satisfied that we were going to put things into place, because we needed to be sure that Phyllis was receiving the best help possible during these latter days. We knew that it would not be forever that she would be alive, that she was in declining health. But I was not expecting the phone call that I got the very next day when Phyllis died, on the Sunday, after making the arrangements. So I had to return and arrange funeral and all the other details. Some of her relatives came from Queensland, and I invited them to stay here in the house, and the house was here. Why not have people stay here? They're coming for a long distance. And I needed to travel between Newcastle and Sydney to do things, because I needed to do some work and got some time off. And I went home on the Wednesday night, sleeping there, and went to pick up my wife and come back late Thursday night. We came back late Thursday night because the funeral was to be on the Friday morning. I was going to be sleeping upstairs in the main bedroom of the house. We came in late, and so we didn't make any noise and carefully picked our way through. I pulled the ripcord for the light to find nothing had happened. I was shocked and horrified to find out that in fact the chandeliers had been removed. Went around the house and I looked in the front room of the house, which is the original sitting room. And I looked in there, and there I was to find boxes and boxes of things. Various things had been taken. Fixtures had been taken and put into boxes in the front room. I went to sleep very uncomfortable that night, knowing full well that I'd have to confront everybody in the morning, to which I did. A huge confrontation on the day of the funeral. An argument we had, and they said, well, you know, Phyllis has left us our personal possessions, and she personally chose the chandeliers. And I said, that's true, but she also personally chose the house. Every single thing that she had personal involvement in. How far do you extend it? And so for the first time in my life, I became front and centre of a dispute over an estate. This house reminds me of all of that, and tonight I'm reminded of it all. It makes it sad on a day with sufficient sadness to say farewell to Phyllis. I needed to deal with these other mundane matters. I had to go down the road to Campbell, I'm not sure of the name of the place, just down the road from here, the next suburb, to talk to people there who had received a bunch of things from the house and had paid money for them, to recover them. And they were not very impressed when I told them that they were part of an estate and people had no right to sell them to them, and I could quite easily go to the police and I would get them back anyway, because they needed to check the credentials of the people that they bought them from and find out why these possessions would be there when their addresses were somewhat different, like in Queensland. They then returned them to the will for this house was very particular and peculiar, as so many things. The solicitor, Mr. Fisher, claimed they were the words of Phyllis. I knew Phyllis very well, and I knew she could never talk in these terms. No way at all. I mean, I'm not saying that she did not have those intents, but the words themselves were the words of the solicitor. They were very confusing in many ways, and in fact did not say a lot of direct things. It was very vague in its meaning, but at the end of the day, I guess there was a way through to see what the intent was. And Phyllis left the house to my family. We needed to, I guess, do some repairs to the house so that we could rent it. And because of the rental income was to come from other sources as well, was to go to other sources, that is to two of her sisters-in-law, I did seek from them some assistance to be able to do the repairs, and they were unprepared to do so. Unfortunately, when they built these houses, there was no worry or concern about ventilation under the floor, with a failure of underfloor ventilation. There was a lot of moisture. It was very dark. A very good atmosphere for termites. Sure enough, there were termites in the neighbourhood, and they found their home in this place. It became necessary for me to take out the entire floor on the bottom area, take out a significant part of the staircase. How I became aware of it was the fact that when there was quietness in the house one night, just sitting thinking about various events that occurred in, around and because of this house, I was able to hear that telltale tick, 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 the noise of termites chewing. So I managed to get the material I needed at a very good deal. I needed to take out some floor space. So I took out around about 1/2 metre in the entire area of the floor. Because of the price of dumping the soil in Sydney, I decided to haul the material to Newcastle. Trailer load by trailer load, I took the material to Newcastle. A lot of hard work, a lot of hours, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears. Eventually, I dug out enough. I put down the new foundation, the new piers. I put in the retriculation for the termite proofing. I trenched it all. Whilst it's not improved practices anymore, I did put creosote on all the underfloor timbers so that we could be confident that we would not have a termite problem again in this house. I put down the floorboards. I was supplied with so many I was able to do upstairs as well. So I ended up finishing up by sanding the floors and putting polish on the floors. Turned out all right. And for a time we rented the place out. Very good income. We had very good tenants, 4 lads, good chaps in the internet business. They didn't make a mess. Kept the place pretty much all right. Eventually the circumstances changed and these 4 males, after so many years of being here, moved on to various locations, and so the foursome broke up. I came back and repaired the house and prepared it for sale. So we have it here now today. The house has been sold. I believe we got a goodly price. A lot of effort has been put into it. But when you sell a house like this, it's not really the price that counts. It's not really what it's worth more than that. I know that as I leave tomorrow and hand the keys over for the last time, I know there will be a degree of sadness. I know that. I can feel it even now. But I'll have the photographs. And even stronger than that, I'll have the memory. For 43 years, this house has been a part of my life, in one form or another. That's a long time. It's a long time when I closed the door for the last time, when I closed the garage door after driving my car out. I would have closed my door. 43 years of my life. That's a long time for anyone. But like everything, there's a time and a place. There's a time to move on, and there's a place to be. Whether or not it is the right or the wrong decision is not important, but it is the decision that has been made. It is the path we've decided to walk, our family. It is the path that we must walk. as a family. And I believe the blessings from this house, the blessings that were given to me because two people, Bob and Phyllis Emblem, who were childless in the physical, inasmuch as they personally were unable to have children. I did discuss with Phyllis one day. I said to her, Phyllis, why is it, did you investigate why you couldn't have children? And she had this simple faith in God. It was simple what she said. Why should we worry about why we cannot have children? Is it not God who gives us the right to have children? Surely if God does not want us to have children, we should not force it upon ourselves to have children. Because if we do, maybe we will be not as good parents as we would like to be. If God knows that we need children to complete our life, He will give us the children that we need. In some ways, Phyllis's faith in God through the Catholic Church was very simple. In another way, it was very profound. One of the things that I've found as I reflect upon her life tonight, her belief in God was very deep. Whilst I may not always agree with her theologically, it was a very deep trust. A trust not often found. A trust that should always be found. As I had to, on the day of the funeral, in a very physical and a very moving way, close the door till eternity on the life of Phyllis Dorothy Emblem, on this planet, and see her delivered to her grave as my responsibility as the executor of her estate. So I had to do that. That was a sad day. This is yet another step of moving on. Tough, yes. Necessary, yes. Will there be regrets? Yes, there'll always be regrets. No matter what we do in life, because of our imperfect nature, even as godly as we choose to be, there will be something left undone, something left unsaid, something done that shouldn't have been, something said that shouldn't have. That will always be the case. But as sad as it is, I am pleased to have been here. I'm pleased to have known this house. I am pleased to have restored this house to somewhat of its majesty that it had, because when I inherited the house, there was much damage by the termites. It is now left in a good state, a goodly state, strong, termite-free, and totally livable. I think the people who have purchased this place have purchased a good thing. I do pray that they may be able to enjoy this house and have many long memories, even as I do today, of this house sometime down the track. I've done my bit. I've done all that I can. And it will be sad in less than 12 hours when I close the door for the last time and move on in a different direction. But I do know one thing, and one thing for sure. The God that Phyllis and Bob, in their own particular way and peculiar way, worshipped and loved in this house, that same God I worship and love. That same God will guide and direct me from here to wherever I need to go, because I will be moving and He will be guiding, because that's my ardent prayer. 63 Albion Street, Annandale. Tomorrow it'll be goodbye. Thank you for all you've been. Thank you.